the Sonia Shockley Show. Turn your bitter into better. Into better. It's the Sonia Shockley Show. It's the Sonia Shockley Show. Turn your bitter into better. Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome, welcome, welcome to the Sonia Shockley Show. I am so excited about being here with you today. What a wonderful, fabulous morning this is. I don't know where you are, what side of the world you're living in, but this is just a beautiful, beautiful day. This is a day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. It is such a pleasure to serve you as Sonia Shockley, the grief coach. I'm here to help you turn your wounds into wisdom, your pain into perspective, and your bitter into better. That's right. You too can turn your bitter into better. I'm so excited today because I have with me my dear friend, my sister, Shawna Nicole is here to tell her story. Ooh, she is in the house, and what an amazing testimony she has to share of just God's deliverance, God's restoration. We serve an awesome God, and it's always wonderful to hear how God has turned the bitter into better. Shawna, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you.
I
Thank
know
you.
it got such this peace and calm about you, and I'm just like, always extra. So I love having you in my space. What a blessing. Shawna, can you just tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So my name is Shawna Nicole, as Sonia said, or Shawna Brannon. I am a pastor's wife. I am a mother. But most of all, I am a child of the Most High God. So I am someone who just loves God, someone who loves helping people. I have a certificate in culinary arts. I have a bachelor's in business, and I have a master's in vocational rehabilitation counseling. So I'm also one who I'm an overcoming mask wearer, and so, and I also help others to overcome wearing masks. So I am one who is helping others to live authentically and to take off their masks, be free to live authentically.
Yes, I love it, girl. Oh my God. And the mask is exhausting. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's like it's only so long you can keep it on before the real you shows up. And it's really great to be able to have people around you who encourage you to be your authentic self. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to ask you to speak up just a little bit,
Okay.
just to make sure that everybody is hearing you. But let's get right into your story because you do have a powerful story, and I want our audience to hear it. So whatever you're comfortable with sharing at this time.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So when I was 13 years old, I lost my mother to AIDS, HIV. And of course, that was devastating for me. But at the time, I was in seventh grade, and I didn't process it. I just basically kept on going as if nothing happened. My school didn't know, my friends didn't know, nobody asked me any questions. I didn't deal with anything, and so basically, I just carried that grief around until I was somewhere in my 30s, I would say, and maybe early 30s. And then it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks to where I had to deal with it. So I don't know that there was any particular one thing that happened that led me to process it. But I guess just over the course of time, life happened, and it just led me to a place of revelation that I really needed to deal with, the grief of losing my mom that I had never dealt with.
Mm, my goodness. I want to just kind of pause for a minute there, because if we were to go back to you at that moment, we're talking junior high,
Hmm.
13, 14 years of age. Did you say 13, or what did you say for you?
13. Uh-huh.
13, and, I was 14 when I lost my father. So we're talking about a very pivotal age. I mean, this is really where, what I like to say, the filters are being put in place with
Hmm.
how we will view the world,
Right.
how we view ourselves, you know. And so now, at this difficult time, at this life changing time, you have this very difficult situation to happen to you with losing your mother.
Hmm.
Um, how was that? I mean, take us there, take us to that version of you, that 13-year-old you, with feeling invisible
Yes.
because nobody is hearing you. The school doesn't know, nobody is really acknowledging your pain. I mean, how was that for you?
Um, Again, I just internalized, I guess, everything. So I didn't really, I did, like you said, I felt invisible. Like nobody knew the pain, the internal, it was like my heart was bleeding on the inside. And, no one can see your insides, right? So it's like, it's just there. It's just festering pain and it's just growing. And it's like you're kind of wanting to scream, but there's no voice.
Hmm.
No voice there. So
Yeah.
that's how I felt. Like I had no voice. I was invisible, almost like a zombie of sorts, just
Mm.
everyday life, still making the grades, still communicating with people, but just feeling a loss.
Yes. Yes. And I'm sure there are many people who can identify with that numbness, just kind of just going through the motions, as you're trying to process grief with really no one to talk to about how you're feeling at that moment.
Right.
Wow. Hmm. So, the illness that your mother died of, it wasn't a natural causes. It's a diagnosis where there can be a lot of shame and guilt around it. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you process that?
Well, I'll say that because of the nature of her death, it was, such a stigma attached to it that
Mm-hmm.
nobody really talked about it. It was like hush hush, don't say anything. You don't want people to know, how your mom died because maybe they may think that you have it. Even though I actually didn't even live with my mom. I didn't grow up in the house with her, but it didn't matter. People not going to ask that question. Well, did you live with your mom? Or, you know, they're just going to automatically assume that if your mom died of that, particular thing, then you probably have it too, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
There was great stigma there. There was great I guess you can say fear of the unknown. Do I have it? Maybe it's lying dormant. Who knows?
Yeah, though the 80s, when HIV and AIDS first came out, I mean, that was just a scary time
Mhm.
because there was so much that was just not known about the disease. And so people had, where there's fear, there's going to be panic.
Oh
And
yeah.
people were just really overreacting. There were many horrible stories, about people who had the diagnosis, and since there was still so much that was misunderstood, people were uneducated about the disease. Yes, you are correct. People would assume certain things like, oh, if mom has it, then you must have it. And so, yes, I could understand a lot of shame and, guilt around that too. And so you weren't even raised with her. You were living with what, your grandmother at the time?
I live with my grandmother.
Mhm.
During certain periods, I live with my grandmother. During certain periods, I live with my great aunt, which was her sister. Um,
Mhm.
my great grandmother, my great aunt, and my great grandmother lived in the house with them.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
This is an excellent example of what I call complicated grief, you know, where there's just this extra layer to grief.
Mhm.
I was explaining that in another video where I talked about with complicated grief, it just gives you more that you need to process. It takes a little bit more time to get over the trauma. If you were to think of just natural grief, someone who, lived a full life and then they died of natural causes, everything for the most part it was okay. So you're able to kind of recover from something like that. That type of loss, you can heal a little bit faster than when it comes to complicated grief, where you've got all of these extra components to it. You
Mhm.
got the fact that, hey, I didn't even really live with her. She's been absent in my life. You're trying to process that part. Then you're trying to process, oh my mother is dead. And then you're processing this horrible disease that she died of, and then you're processing the fact that you feel invisible. You have no voice, nobody hears you. I mean, this is just a lot, especially for a young girl. And
Mhm.
all I can do is say, praise God that you have made
Praise
it over and you've been able to do so much. Even though you had so many challenges earlier
God.
in life. Let's talk a little bit before we move on to how you're doing now. Just, I know children sometimes they're great video recorders, but they're not the best interpreters. And I
Right,
think
right.
about even myself, in my younger days and at that age and how I understood certain things. And then you get on the other side and you're like, oh, it wasn't really like that at all. What are some things that you might have misinterpreted when it came around your mother's death?
I um I think one of the things that I probably misinterpreted was just the sovereignty and the love of God. How much He loves me and how much He cares for me. I really, I grew up in church, but at that time I didn't know anything about the love. I mean, the true love of God. And the sense
Mm,
of who He is, and how He moves in our lives. I would say also that I probably misinterpreted um, my grandmother in how she um, processed the whole grief thing, what she was going through. I think I misinterpreted the magnitude of what she was going through. And probably, if I were to be honest, maybe, just the family members around her, and how
okay.
they didn't speak about it. Everybody, like I said, was pretty quiet.
Mhm.
To me, being quiet meant it didn't matter or it wasn't important, so I think I misinterpreted that. Maybe they didn't say anything because they didn't know what to say,
Mm.
or for those who didn't say anything because they didn't know, so I misinterpreted those signals and kind of internalized, took it to mean something probably totally different than what it actually did mean.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I love that you said that, especially when it comes to children grieving. It's so important to not act as if that person never existed, because I think people are afraid of getting the child upset or afraid of getting the person upset. And it's so important that you still acknowledge that you open up a door to say, hey, would you like to talk about how you're feeling right now?
Mhm.
Because, and I get it, because that was how it was with my father. Nobody even talked about him. It was like they didn't even mention him barely. And then when I did hear somebody who talked about him, I was so excited. Like, you knew my father? Like, tell
Yes,
me about him,
yes.
And so, but, it was as if maybe my family was thinking if I talked about it, maybe, you might get upset. But it's almost as if that person is gone and nobody even acknowledged that they existed, that they were
Mhm.
here, that they contributed to society, that because they were here and I'm here. And I think that any child is looking for that to say, hey,
Mhm.
your mom's gone. Do you want to talk about it? Do you have any questions? You know, all of those things help to make a child feel even more safe. They help them to feel comforted. Um, but when we just tell them things like, hey, just be strong, like, oh,
Mhm.
don't cry, it's okay. These are the messages that they get, that
Mhm.
we all get in our younger years, that make us now put on that mask that you talked about earlier, where we're just kind of phony and we can get Academy Awards. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
fine. You
I'm
know.
fine. And I feel like too, not having that person there to question you, or
Mhm.
a village of people who rally around you, can cause a sense of um, identity crisis. Who
Mhm.
am I? What is my purpose? What am I doing? Why am I even here? I think it can send you into a dark place because you're questioning your whole identity based on, your parent or your loved one.
Mhm. Good, good. Yes, all excellent, excellent questions, excellent responses. Thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking with Shawna Nicole as she is just telling us her fantastic and amazing testimony of how God has just blessed her life and to just turn the bitter into better. So, Shauna, let's talk a minute for a second about what's going on with your life now. You've gotten over some major obstacles. Um, what is God doing in your life? I'm sure there's some amazing things going on. Just bring us up to date.
Okay, so right now I'm currently working behind the scenes on some projects that I won't really give a voice to just yet, but just stay tuned for that. But after the release of the book, I will say that I'm enjoying the feedback that people are giving me concerning how the book has impacted them. People that I was actually that I knew close up and personal and didn't know their story or their struggle. So it's been quite amazing to see how God can use your story and
Yeah.
just bless others. How He can use your story, and help others overcome or address some issues that maybe they didn't know they had, or maybe they had pushed things, kind of back into their mental compartmentalization, as I would call it. You hadn't processed it just yet. But when people are reading the book, they're just giving wonderful feedback about the things that they learned about themselves, which is super important.
Good, good. That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit more about the book and where can we get the book? I know the title is As They Knew Her.
Yes. It's As They Knew Her. You can get the book at Amazon. It's available in the Kindle edition and also paperback. And if you want, you can also go to www.shawnanicole.com and get a personalized autograph copy. So those are the ways that you can get a copy of the book.
Okay. And then if someone wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach you?
On Facebook, you can go to at Shawna Nicole, or you can also send me an email uh, at shawnafavor@yahoo.com. Or again, you can reach out via my website at www.shawnanicole.com.
All righty. Sounds good. All right. So we have a few people It looks like Yvonne Cook is saying, I thoroughly enjoyed reading Shauna's book. Oh, look at that. Awesome. It was amazing to see how she turned some of her very traumatic things in her life into amazing moments of prayer and praise. What a blessing. Look at that. How does that make you feel when you hear about your story and how people are being blessed now?
It's awesome. Again, it takes a leap of faith, um, and just courage to know that people will be blessed by your story. There's so many people that have gone through, different things in life, things that you wouldn't even expect just by looking at them, but we're walking and talking miracles, and so to just hear that feedback, it just lets me know that God doesn't waste any experience.
I know.
He uses it all for his glory.
Isn't
All of
that
it.
the truth? I'm telling you. I mean, and you're thinking like, man, how does God take my culinary skills? How does he take my master's? How does he take my bachelor's? How does he take all of these life experiences now and put them together to use them almost as if, you might think things are random, but
Mhm.
he is doing it and like putting this special recipe together and making Jeremiah 29:13.
Yes.
For
Yes.
it's like this is so awesome how he can take everything. I think about even my own life and the different tragedies that I've experienced, my grief and the different losses that I've had to endure. And then I think about all of the different occupations that I've had and how they all just have just brought me to this moment and prepared me for a moment, for just such a time as this. And so
Yes.
meeting amazing people like you has also just been a blessing for
Oh,
me. So I'm just so grateful. So let's just go back to that 13-year-old self for a minute. And now we're saying the 13-year-old self compared to this mature, beautiful, amazing Proverbs 31 woman that's standing or sitting before me now. What would you tell that younger version of yourself?
ooh, I would say first and foremost, get some counseling, honey.
Yeah.
Get yourself some counseling. That is where you can kind of let your hair down, so to speak. You can, they're going to ask you questions that you're going to need to process the events that have gone on. So get yourself some counseling, and confide in people. If they're not asking you questions, you go to them. Ask them some questions. That's going to help you heal. Um, but I guess first and foremost, just be open about it because the devil loves to dwell in secrecy.
Mm,
Because of that, he will torment you there. He will he will say all sorts of negative things. He will make you feel some kind of way about yourself, you know. So just be open and honest, get counseling, open up to people, um, and be free. Be
yeah,
free.
yeah, for sure. And going back to the 80s, girl, there wasn't even counseling was just not popular,
No, no.
especially when it came to the Christian arena.
Right.
So, I'm not sure what year it was when your mom died. What early 90s, somewhere in there.
1990,
Okay, so
90.
yeah, still, it's just like a new concept. And then to talk about counseling or to even talk about depression, those were just like, no, no, we don't get depressed, not as Christians.
Just lay it all
So
on the altar.
right. Yes. You just need to pray about it. You need to give it to God. And yes, I agree with all of that. Of course, giving it to God and to pray about it, but you still need some
Mhm,
tangible tools that you can hold on to. I need somebody to walk me through this. This is all brand new for me. And,
mhm.
prayer is us, of course, communicating and talking to God, but nobody really tells you how to just sit still and listen for God to speak back. So
Right,
Psalms,
right.
we see that in Psalms 46:10. It's like a whole new concept of really learning how to be still and know that He is God, to just sit in that place and with confidence that He will come through for you. So all of these things, there are things that I learned, of course, with maturity and as I grew up. But back in those early days, this was like a whole new concept, you know. So yes, I love that you talked about therapy because it's biblical, you know, self-care, biblical. All of these things we see even Jesus himself taking time to see about himself, to rest and to quiet his mind, to communicate with the Father.
Mhm.
These are all imperative tools, coping skills to help us to get through any type of situation. So,
And I will add to that, writing. If you're a writer, if you're
yes.
a journaler, for me, I didn't realize it, but back in high school, I wrote some poems. And
Mm-hmm.
poems, although I didn't know it was processing for me, one of the titles, and I actually put it in my book, "A Black Girl Talks of Weeping." You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't, it was just therapy for me. I didn't know really what that represented. But later on, once I began to process and I pulled out all these things, I saw that these were coping mechanisms that God had used, to kind of get me through, to get me over.
Yes.
It's journaling, writing, all of that. That's going to help
Right.
process as well.
Right. Right. For sure. You can definitely see his favor. You can still see his hand in the midst of tragedy, you know, where even though you didn't know, he was there
Mhm.
doing that counseling. He was there, you know, uh, covering over you and hovering over you and just being a mama to you, being a daddy to you, guiding you, making sure that you were on the right path. And so, yes,
Amen.
it's awesome, huh?
Yes. Yes.
It really is a blessing, and I'm just so grateful to know that you know, I guess if it hadn't been for the Lord on my side, I don't know where
My
I would
God.
be.
My God.
I'm just extremely grateful for his compassion and his unfailing love towards me. And so I just continue to grow. And I've kind of gotten to a point now where that whining song says, um, I, I didn't know I'd get to know you this way. They got a
Yeah.
song like that. Like, wow, how did I get to know you this way? Really? Like, I'm knowing you this much now. I'm so connected with you. And of course, it comes through some of the painful trials and situations that we go through. So, well, any final thoughts for our listeners before we go? We're almost out of time, and I just wanted to see if you had any final thoughts.
Um, hmm. Final thoughts.
You like, I said it all.
Um, Final thoughts, I would say again, take off the mask, um,
Yes,
learn who you actually are.
yes, yes.
There's there's just so much to it. Just put your hope in God. Um, if you're not having a walk with God, I would say get to know God.
Mhm.
Know God. He will help you through every difficult situation. Every difficult situation. He was there. He's always been there. But if you don't acknowledge him, then you're not aware that he's there. So he's right there holding your hand, but just get to know him. Get to
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure, for sure. Well, I want to thank again my special guest, Shawna Nicole, as she has shared with me and with all of our audience all around the world, her powerful, powerful testimony of how God has just blessed her and walked with her on this path of life. And the best is still yet to come. Huh?
yeah,
I mean, this is only the beginning.
yes.
There's still so much more that he is doing through you. And I'm sure another book is being birthed through you also as well. I know that you have your blogging that you do.
Mhm.
You're also coaching. You're a financial empowerment coach. I mean, You've got so many things going on, and I'm just so grateful that our paths can cross. For those of you who would like to reach out to Shawna, again, you can reach her at shawnafavor@yahoo.com. Again, that's shawnafavor@yahoo.com. Please support her. Go to Amazon and order her book, As They Knew Her. As They Knew Her, as she tells her story about her mother's life and how it affected her life and what God is doing as a result of this testimony that she has been through. Also, I'd love for you to go to my YouTube channel and like and subscribe to my channel, Sonia Shockley, the Grief Coach. You can reach me at either Big Sister Sonia at gmail.com or Sonia the Grief Coach at gmail.com. Continue to send in your questions to me. I answer your questions on Fridays. We have Q&A. No question is off limit. I'd love to hear your questions and see how I can support you on your grief journey. Well, I guess that's it, unless you got anything else to say, huh? We're all set.
We're all set.
God bless you. Thank you guys so much for joining. I love all of you with an everlasting love. This is Sonia Shockley helping you turn your bitter into better. Take care and God bless.
God bless.